we're now recording. I'm Laura Tellis. I'm the president this year of the STC South Central Texas chapter. So we used to be STC Houston, but we've kind of absorbed Austin and San Antonio and most of Texas, right? And then Louisiana can join us too, or anyone can join us now because during COVID, our events are going to be virtual for sure. And we'll probably do, even when we can meet in person, we'll probably do every other event virtual as well. So we hope you will join us again. And we just had our elections where we all ran unopposed, but I was elected president. Erica Frensley is immediate past president. Jamie Sagan is our vice president / program director. Jennifer Shumati is our treasurer, Trina Erdeltz our secretary, and then Yvonne Wade Sanchez is our membership manager. And we have a couple of new volunteers too, Sinitra Williams and Margaret, what's her last name? Margaret, I feel bad, I don't remember. Maybe we'll cut this part out. But we do have our fall events lined up. So on Tuesday, our events are the second Tuesday of the month, and on Tuesday, October 13th, Jamie will be presenting her presentation on what Harry Potter professors teach us about instructional design. So that's going to be our Halloween-themed presentation then. And then in November, I believe we're going to try and get Liz Fraley to teach us about automating our social media posts to make things a lot easier so you don't spend your whole day trying to do your social media marketing. And welcome everyone. Tonight we have Daniel Foster, who works for TechSmith, and he's going to share his presentation on the value of visual content and a simplified user interface. And Daniel, would you prefer questions to be at the end, or is it okay for us to interrupt you, or how do you prefer?
You know, I think it'd be great if folks have questions they want to jump in and ask them. I am on one screen today.
Oh, okay.
with this computer because I'm demoing from the Windows machine. So anyway, I might not see chats, so it's probably better just to get on the mic and break in.
Okay, so feel free to shout out your questions if you have any. And okay, are you ready to get started? We see your slides here.
Great, yep, can do.
Okay, go for it.
All right, thank you. Okay. Cool, in slide mode. I'm also operating the same slides from my Mac up here that have my notes. So we'll see how this goes. I'm giving myself a challenge working from home, got all the machines. So yeah, this is a talk and demo that I gave at the summit, and was asked to do it again for you guys. And so I'm happy to. I haven't changed up the content a lot, so I guess apologies off the bat if this is something that you already attended. But you know, I tend to find that time goes by and there's a lot of things that I'll forget with any topic, and so hopefully it's at least a good refresher and has some good value there. And like I said before we got started, I'm happy to tailor some of the demo to what you guys want to know about and dig into more. So just my background, what I do at TechSmith is I work on the Snagit team in a role that lets me talk to folks about how they're using the product, how they would like to be using the product in the future. And then I'm also observing things that help us dream about how we can solve new problems for people in new areas and deliver new kinds of value for folks that hasn't been dreamed of yet. So that's always fun. Someone was saying in the chat there that I think it was Ava, that you got a customer experience survey recently from TechSmith. If it was a really long one and in depth, that was something I worked on. So it's always fun to be able to use many methods, not just talking to people, but also surveying to sort of learn a lot more about how people are using the products and all of that. So anyway, my past at TechSmith and before that was in content. So I did a lot with marketing content and writing and blogging and a little bit of kind of instructional type bloggy content. But I shared at Summit about our ducks. One of the things that happened to us with COVID brain was that we got ducklings because they were so darn cute at Tractor Supply. And so if you were there and you heard the beginning of that story, I thought I should probably finish the story arc, which is we kept having people ask us, why in the world do you have ducks? It's not for the eggs, right? We're like, no, it's just because it seemed like a good idea at the time. We couldn't say no to the kids. So we got tired of being tied down. They did not stay cute and fluffy, just like kids don't really stay all that cute for long. They got big and bossy, and we were wanting to, maybe just go away for the weekend somewhere, and we had to figure out how to have someone come and take care of them. So we loaded them in a truck and took them to a farm down the road. I promise you, it was an actual real dairy farm down the road, not the quote unquote farm down the road. And they're happy there. So anyway, it was fun while it lasted, but we were glad that we were able to eventually not have to kind of be committed for life to that. So yes, TechSmith. Who is TechSmith? So we're best known as the Snagit and Camtasia people, and some of you use those products. We were talking a little bit beforehand about Snagit and Camtasia. Snagit for screen capturing and then annotation and editing of images, and you'll see kind of the depth that we've gone to in the last few years with new releases. And then Camtasia is really all about creating videos and video content, instructional kind of content. And the portfolio of things from TechSmith keeps growing. I'm not here to talk about our products, but if you haven't checked out what's available, the list keeps growing. So I encourage you to go check out techsmith.com. Nomia Pro is a hosting site that's fairly recent. We have some asset services so that you can pull assets into your content, and the list goes on. Anyway, so what we're going to cover tonight is this intro. What is SUI, or Simplified User Interface graphics? What are they? Why should we bother? And how would you use them? So kind of giving a little bit of a business case for that, and some business reasons for applying this approach. And then a little bit of the how. So how to actually get in and create them, some design principles and tools. Like I mentioned, I am a little colorblind. So if you call me out on saying the wrong color, that's why. It's just something I live with. It's fine. But a lot of us aren't designers. So how do we make the best with the abilities that we have to generate nice looking output? And then a little word about localization and dealing with localized text in your screenshots, and moving into some of the cool ways that you can make multiple formats with your content with Snagit. And questions and discussion, welcome along the way. So feel free to just open the mic, and I'll try to pause every once in a while so that you have a chance. Okay, so what is a simplified user interface graphic? This is a treatment that you've seen. Even if you don't know the name, you've started to see it around because it's making its way into all kinds of technical content and onboarding graphics, and even some marketing content, which is kind of where it started. And what you would look at if you were saying, well, I'm going to apply this SUI, or the simplified user interface approach, is you take a screenshot like this one of a basic web interface, and after you apply the treatment, it would look something like this. And so when you decompose what this is, it's basically saying it's a more abstracted version of the interface, where anything that's irrelevant, so irrelevant text or graphics or other kinds of things, are all covered up and simplified. And so it's noteworthy to say that even though it looks different on the right, you can still recognize what the application is. So if you were familiar with this application, you would kind of be able to find your way around and see what it is we're talking about and where to click. And that's really the goal. One of the really nice things that you get from this treatment is being able to get rid of some of the distracting or overwhelming elements. I don't know about you, but you work with UI designers, UX folks, and sometimes they're under a lot of pressure, and interfaces just get crowded, and there's just a bunch of stuff all competing for attention, and it feels cluttered. So how do we strip away some of that clutter? So in this case, if I'm going to tell you that what you need to click on is the Connect Mobile Device option in this file menu, what if I could just reduce it down to something that looks a lot more like this? And of course, add text as well. It's good to pair that visual with some content, with some text that also explains exactly what the steps are, right? So this would be a really typical way to use a SUI graphic in an article. Here's the written text that tells you step 1, do this, step 2, do that. And then here's the graphic that shows you kind of where you're looking. Oh, it's in the file menu and it's most of the way down. There's connect mobile device. So it just helps users get oriented and stay really focused on exactly what you're trying to communicate to them and not get kind of lost in the weeds. So this term, as far as I know, someone at TechSmith coined this. If someone else knows of a place that the term was used earlier, that's cool. I'd love to give credit where credit's due. But it just didn't have a name, and so it was hard to talk about. So it was like, let's give it a name. It even has a cool acronym with SUI that's fun to say, and then sort of this definition, just focusing on the getting rid of the focusing on the essentials by stripping away anything that's really not important. So that's kind of the core concept. And I collected a few examples here, and more pop up. There's actually one of the things that we've got this Slack group that one of the channels we've set up in there, and we were talking about earlier, is it doesn't get as much use as I'd like, but you're welcome to join it, and I'll have a link at the end for how you can join. Any community is as good as all the people that are sharing with each other and asking and answering questions. So one of the things that we do in there is share like examples that we've come across. So I've collected a few here. This one is from the Google Suite Learning Center, and they have this Get Started with Product X kind of series of content. And in that, it's sort of like overviews or get started kind of stuff. And they have a number of examples where they've got an abstracted out interface like this one here, where you kind of can see what you're needing to do. Oh, manage members, that's where it is. I can see the side menu, the sidebar, but really focus on exactly what you need in the moment that you need it. Microsoft Edge, we were talking about before we started. This is another great example. Go check out the Microsoft Edge tips site for a lot of this. They've taken this effect really, really far, and they've actually iterated on their content a couple of times, which is pretty cool to see. But they've stripped out basically all of the text from their screenshots, so they're only these abstract graphics, and that lets them not have to localize them at all. So bold choice, for Microsoft. I'm sure they are surveying their customers and trying to, do some usability studies to make sure it's working for them. But in the graphical elements, they've basically just taken out all the text. One graphic for all languages, pretty cool if you have a heavy localization burden like Microsoft. This one is from Dropbox, and I chose it because I think it's interesting that this article isn't in English, but you can see just by looking at this little animation a pretty good sense of how you would go through this process of synchronizing your content. So that's another way that SUI gets applied, is in little graphics or animations that you can follow and see what the steps are. Also pretty useful because anytime you put something into video or animation, then anytime you want to change it, it can be kind of expensive to go back and open that file up and change it. So this avoids some of that change burden. Procore, another brand, some folks from there have been pretty active in our community and stuff. And so we talked a little bit about why they were adopting SUI for some of their content. And they specifically talked about international markets and also the constant updates to the UI. And so they were just like, we're tired of having to update our stuff all the time. It was getting to be too much of a hassle. So they tried to simplify it as much as possible just to avoid some of those costs and complexity. Blackbaud, similarly, I know some folks there, and asked about why they went the SUI route. They had this report builder tool, and what they said was new users would get there and it would just be blank, and they would just kind of freeze like a deer in the headlights, like I'm not sure where to start. And so being able to, they called it demystify the interface for first-time users with this little animation that just kind of shows like, here's and this is like step 2 out of a, I think, 5-step process or something. Like, this is a little onboarding, kind of give you an intro, an overview of the interface, and use SUI to make it something that will last a long time. And this is an example from TechSmith where we have Snagit on multiple operating systems. And so we kind of have to respect the way the OS, has certain conventions. So file menus become one of those things. So the file menus are different, or the context menu, sorry, is different in these cases. So we're able to reduce some of those differences by combining the Mac and the Windows context menu just into one simplified menu and show, like, here's what you do is you just hit the edit text. Also, that's great because if we add or remove things to those menus over time, over versions of the software, we don't have to go revise that. So some of the things that we're seeing here are, content is more effective when you can kind of focus the viewer down. You're able to protect it from having to update as often every time the UI changes or a color changes or the layout changes a little bit. You can kind of get a little bit beyond having to implement all those changes. If you use it to avoid some language in your screenshots, then you can certainly cut or at least reduce your localization costs. And one that we haven't really talked about, but certainly comes up, some folks have said, yeah, I'm dealing with, I don't have a demo instance that has dummy data in it. And obviously I can't use my product for screenshots with our real customer data in it, because that would be a violation of their privacy. And so I need a way to just abstract out the text or the fields so that I can still get these screenshots in without having to do a lot of cleanup and blurring. When you blur a ton of stuff on the page, it tends to look sort of odd to people, and then they often are like, what we've heard from customers is they'll have their customers say, why is all this stuff blurred? What are you hiding? What's there? It just kind of makes them more curious about what's there. Any questions about that so far? Happy to pause. All right, so, yep, go ahead.
I could just add that, so I use SUI graphics as well. And one way that I use them is to allow me to reuse images across multiple applications, because I work on a project that has several applications that all use the same platform. So there's a lot of elements that are common among different applications. And so, but like the surrounding like menus and things like that will be different. So I use SUI graphics so that I don't have to have like 15 screenshots of the same module. And it's cut down the amount of screenshots I have to take dramatically. So.
That's great. Thank you, Jennifer. Yeah. Anyone else who's experimented with it or put this technique into production that wants to share about what drove that? All right.
We use SUI a lot at my company, especially because if something's blurred, people always want to sit there and try to read what it says, even though it's blurred. So it's really nice to be able to replace it with something that people don't get distracted by.
Yeah, that's great. And I have heard some people say, like, I just use blur, it's easier, and my customers like it. Cool, do what works. We felt like we just wanted to give another option and talk about this option. So yeah, that's great to hear. All right, so do visuals matter? So this is some content that I've shared before, so I'll go pretty quickly through it, but we do get that question sometime about, and I'll see this come up in some of the communities like the Write the Docs community or other communities I've been in, where people will say, well, I just try to strip out all the screenshots or all the visuals and just go with text only because it's easier to update. And so we wanted to study this question and find out how much do visuals actually impact outcomes that are important to the business. So we sponsored some research on it. It was a kind of a lab research with someone who had people do a bunch of series of tasks, and then they measured the outcomes of that. And so there's the full findings at this bit.ly URL here. Feel free to grab that if that's something that would be useful to you. But I'll just give you kind of the overview of it here. Really, what the main findings were that it was a preference scale for one aspect of this research, which was asking people if your workplace is sending you a lot of information, if there's a lot of stuff that you have that's how to do this, how to do that, what formats do you prefer? So this was just about opinion and preference. But it showed that people really overwhelmingly preferred visual forms of communication, but that a lot of workplaces just don't provide information and how-to kinds of things and help content in those formats. Interestingly, when we've surveyed our customers, video is like by far #1. People love the video tutorials, but they also really like a lot of help content in various formats too. But it tends to be what the common thread is that it often tends to be quite visual. So this was going a little bit deeper and asking people the same set of research subjects, what would be the most engaging forms of communication. So video was #1 for this group as well, but text and images was also up there, and just plain text email didn't really carry the day. So all of us, I think, often get frustrated a little bit when you have that back and forth, and it's like, if you could just illustrate this and show me what it is that you're trying to tell me, I think I would understand a lot better. So secondly, then, it was trying to find out, do visuals as part of instructional content actually boost performance? Can people complete a task more accurately or more quickly with visuals? And we found that people do indeed absorb the information more quickly when it's in a visual format. And then also that task completion improves. So if you think about what that means to your customers, task completion, outside of a lab means things like not having to contact support and get with a live agent and take up a lot of expensive agent time. It means not having to flounder around as a customer and search and try to figure out, I did this last month, but now it's a whole new month and I can't remember. And, so being able to have that recall quicker and more at the ready is a big deal. So finally, then, we try to apply some economic factors to this and say, well, what about that visual, the impact of those visuals on the business itself? And so when you look at workplace communication, again, is kind of the focus for this study. But it was like, look, if you could save people, this many minutes in a week, which was on average about 33 minutes in a week, which equals about 25 hours in a year, and that would be like adding, a number of employees to your company every year. So it really does have economic outcomes as well, to be able to save that time and save that churn on doing tasks. So yeah, visuals do matter, and then it really just becomes, how do we make this manageable, and how do we make our visuals easier to create, cheaper to maintain, and how do we get the value of all those economic incentives for having visuals in the content? So any questions about that part or comments? Is it a discussion on your teams? Like, should we even bother with screenshots, or should we should we strip them all out and just go text only? Because man, that would be cheaper.
I found that sometimes it seems like we use screenshots too much, because if you do it for every step, it's a lot. And it also, like, if some minute thing on the screen changes, you have to redo all of them. But I understand, like, maybe if it was simplified, you wouldn't have to change that minor thing on each individual screenshot. So
yeah, and I'm definitely not an advocate either for superfluous screenshots, right? Where it's just like, it's an obvious thing that is almost no different from the previous one. So why do you have two that are basically the same? So yeah, I think there's wisdom there to having the right number that is really the assist, so that it's not sort of just mindlessly, every single step has its own screenshot. Agreed.
I think that's the debate that I always have with myself is, what do I need screenshots of? There's a degree that seems silly to me, but then you don't want, to be too, it's not just a matter of the number, but of the right ones. And that's always the challenging part to figure out, I think.
Yeah, and I think You all are, more expert at this than I. I feel like whenever I'm putting myself really in the customer's shoes and just trying to think which parts of this probably feel confusing, and there's going to be some best guesses in there, but this is likely somewhere that people are going to fall down. And for me, what feeds that is actually watching people use our software and talking with people who are brand new to it, because I'll often be surprised. It's like, oh, I thought that would have been really intuitive and obvious, but nope. So yeah, knowing where that's most helpful.
So someone had a question in the chat. Does Snagit have a way to make it easier to make visuals more accessible, such as alt text, things like that?
Most of the time, like if you're creating, online docs, the place you'd probably be doing that is in the authoring tool. If you're using Madcap Flare or RoboHelp or something, because you're creating the HTML with the text and the alt text along with it. So yeah, there's not really something built in, because usually what you're outputting from Snagit would be the image itself, and there's not a great standard for putting alt text in the image file. It tends to be in the ride along.
Typically what you would do is set the alt text in the tooltip, and if you're using web-based output, so like in Flare, and all they're doing is putting in the HTML properties for you, but like whenever you add an image, it'll give you an option to set the alt text in the tooltip text, or you can just go into the HTML and do that yourself there as well. But that's done on the HTML side, not the image itself.
Okay. Yeah, and that's a very valid, I think it's a good thing to be thinking about, right, with anything that's image. Cool. All right. Thanks for all that interaction, you all. It's nice. I don't feel like I'm just talking to myself here too much. Okay. See if I can operate this keyboard. Here we go. So yes, basically, quick recap of the benefits that we've talked about, and then let's focus on this one. So content effectiveness by focusing in for clarity and helping people really follow the steps and be able to not get distracted or confused. That's where this concept of predictive eye tracking comes in and can be a useful tool. So marketers used eye tracking first to do things like figure out why people weren't clicking on their banner ads on a web page. Remember when banner ads were new and flashy and everyone was looking over there on the left or the right or the top, and then pretty soon people weren't looking there anymore. So the question became, how do we figure out where people are looking, for a lot of different reasons, not least of which is advertising. But so early on, eye tracking was, goggles and things that would actually watch the pupil as it moved around a page. And over time, though, people applied machine learning to this and said, there's actually, because we're humans and humans are kind of predictable in some ways, it's, people are going to be looking at a lot of the same things. So if we apply machine learning, then we can have these algorithms, and then we can just generate a heat map based on where the human eye would probably look. And it's kind of a probabilistic treatment. So human face is sort of a focus for humans. And so the machine would say, look, in this really cool stock photo here, because people in stock photos always high five, I'm sure that we'd be looking at the faces of the people here, most likely. So this was one example of that in action, but you can also apply it to screen content. And so one of my colleagues, Anton Bolin, he works in Germany, helping represent TechSmith in Europe. And he got connected with this service that's free. That's the URL, expose.io. So you can upload screenshots and then see where would the machine think that people are going to look in that screenshot. So here's an example of just taking an annotation and it's saying this one's annotated on the left, this one's simplified on the right, because some people will say, well, I'll just add annotations and that will draw the eye. And it does to an extent, but you can also see that in the one on the left, without it being simplified, the eye is kind of drawn to a bunch of different things all over the screen. And they're really not important, because what you're trying to get people to do is just look at that menu item of, pick the note item in the menu. So everything else becomes noise, essentially. So in this one, what I'm going to use in the demo part is these screenshots from Zoom, the Zoom settings. Sort of the story here is that I'm trying to give someone some steps on how to set up their settings in Zoom so they don't get Zoom bombed. And so here's a normal screenshot. Here's just an annotated screenshot with orange highlight there on the settings panel. And when you run that through this algorithm, this is what you get. Not a lot of difference. You can see, maybe there's a little more attention that spills over into that settings area, but it's really dominated by these kind of big blue blobs and these big colorful icons at the bottom. So that's all just noise. That's not really the thing I'm trying to get people to look at. And so how would I take some of these screenshots and actually simplify them using Snagit? So we're going to do this live, as they say, with no safety net, and hope for the best here. I've got some stuff staged. I've always believed in the cooking show style, so hopefully you don't have to watch me, whisk the eggs, because you already know how to whisk eggs, but we can get to the more interesting parts. Before I dive into this, though, any questions about the eye tracking or comments on that? Hearing nothing and waiting a full 6 seconds, I will proceed. So this is a series of 3 screenshots. I'm going to reuse the same ones that I used at Summit. I'm telling you, setting up this demo stuff takes hours just to find a good example and sort of have all the things, in cooking show format. So don't judge me too harshly. So yeah, it's just basically the steps are I need to go in here and click settings. And once I'm in settings, then I want to choose the in meeting settings. And then when I'm in meeting, I want to set up, change my screen sharing preference, for example. So 3 screenshots, kind of 3 steps that you go through. Chose it because I feel like this is pretty common, where people have this kind of a thing they have to show a sequence. So in Snagit, we have a tool that's called Simplify that we built basically because we started seeing people doing this out there, using their design resources and their fancy high-end Adobe products and all their design knowledge. And we thought we could probably make this available to more people and make it a lot easier for everyone to do with some tools. So we built this Simplify tool. Going to move my go to meeting box. Okay, so in the Simplify tool here, all I did is I selected the tool, and these color palettes are actually generated programmatically from every image. So it's reading the image and finding these colors that you can kind of see here and saying these feel like the dominant colors, so we'll just choose those by default. A word about the conversation we were having before we got started about kind of picking more aesthetically pleasing colors. We are doing some updates based on feedback from folks like yourselves to try to pick better colors, a little bit more to the softer end of the spectrum. This is really a bit too dark, these 2 colors here, for the output that you want. So we've done some tuning, and so in the next version of Snagit that comes out this fall, they'll have some of the new algorithm in there that I think so far in my testing and in our beta testing, it's really helped just get a better out of the box result. So this auto simplify toggle, I can just turn that on, and Snagit just applies these blocks. So it basically does its best to say, let's try to keep them fairly consistent in color groupings based on kind of the areas of the screenshot. Keep the sizes pretty consistent, and it gives you a start. And you could go through here, if you click this show original, you can actually see kind of, it changes the opacity of those blocks. And so you can go in and start to remove some things in order to get a better result. But I'm going to back up because I actually want to talk about a few principles of doing this. And I think edit revert to original is going to give me back my original screenshot here. I think there's actually some things that I would do first. So it is a question of like, how much should I simplify and how much can I take out? And you know, we were talking about like, I just want rules. I wish it were even easier, but I would say some good rules of thumb are, you know, look at things that just simply are big and distracting and are not really contributing to the instructional value of this screenshot. So I would say, you know, this is kind of and it's not an advertisement because it's not asking you to spend money, but it's basically like trying to get you to go do something else, right? Connect up this integration. Not really relevant or useful for showing these 3 steps. So I'm just going to take the selection tool. I selected that, make sure that this is over here on autofill. And then when I hit delete, it just deletes that out and fills that area. So it's kind of fun, just feels like, I don't know, like cleaning house or something. You can just go through and get rid of some things like that that are simply just going to be distractions and not really help anybody with the content. So this is already looking better. One of the odd things about the UI here is that what I want to show them is the user is go to the settings link, but it has this giant bold blue because the designer is trying to really draw attention to that. So I'm going to be pretty opinionated here and go ahead and get rid of that too. You know, maybe the designer will yell at me later, but I think I can take it. So now when I go back to simplify, and if I hit this, actually, you know what? I'm going to do one more thing. I'm going to get rid of this big blue one too. It's better to just ask forgiveness than permission, right? That'll be fine. Okay, so now I'm going to go into simplify and hit this toggle again. And I like the results better already. And one of the things is I don't have those really bold kind of colors. So it just feels like a lighter aesthetic, and it feels like when I put on an annotation, like if I want to draw attention to something, I have room to do that because everything on the page isn't shouting for attention. So one of the things that little tips here that I'll share is you have these shapes over here, and these all can be applied manually as well. So I can go in and do that by, if I just choose that shape and draw on here, I'll get this nice set of lines and that kind of thing. But these little color wells, color pickers, you can go in and just change it. So if I change this to something really, way over here, then it's just going to change all those objects that are mapped to that. You can also, when you get a color that you like, and maybe you have 3 or 4 colors that you're going to use over a whole series of screenshots where you want them to be consistent, and you've picked out a really nice kind of subtle aesthetic, you can go down here and save them by hitting the plus button, and it adds it to the My Colors. So then I can just go click that, and it will bring all those into line with whatever that color was. So a couple tips there that I think are really helpful when you're thinking about managing colors, keeping colors consistent, and having a good, nice looking output, even for those of us who aren't a graphic designer. So the principles I've shared are just go ahead and reduce clutter wherever you feel like it's not helping the user. It's better just to take it out. You'll kind of know if you've gone too far if the interface doesn't look like the same interface anymore. And then color, I would use contrast when you need to make something really jump out and get attention. But otherwise, I would try to reduce the contrast and make it a lot just kind of more softer colors. So other things I'll do here to clean this up, I'm going to grab the Move tool. So Move is really useful. Like if I wanted to, say, select a bunch of things here, I can drag and select multiples. And then if I hit delete, those are gone. I don't actually want to delete them. I want to go back and get this, which was the Zoom logo, and because I want it to have the Zoom logo, so that's kind of an anchoring element. And I'm gonna, instead of just a block over my face here, I'm gonna use in the Simplify tool, I actually have these nifty little avatar shapes. So I don't know, I think that's maybe the right one. Seems good. And we'll draw it out there. It's not perfect, but I can go in here, and all of these things are just shapes that I can kind of move around and get just right. So we'll call that pretty good. And then back to my show original checkbox, the one that I want to show is actually settings. So click on that, delete the box off of there, and then turn off that show original. So now basically the step that I want to show is in the Zoom interface, or the Zoom, once logged into Zoom, click settings. And in my favorites tool, I have all of my orange shapes and my favorite emojis. And I'm gonna grab this orange box and just, make a kind of a highlight here. So any questions about that step and sort of how we got from the original sort of raw screenshot to what we have here?
What was that autofill feature that you were using? Is that part of the Simplified tool, or is that under a different menu? Whenever you were deleting stuff in the beginning?
So that's part of the select tool, selection, sorry. So if I select something and then hit delete, it will autofill if I have autofill selected.
So it'll match the background color of whatever selected? Yeah,
it will. It even tries, this isn't a good example. I'm trying to think of a good example, but I might not have anything here in my library. But it'll even, like if there's a line across, so it's kind of subtle, but there are some lines that you might be able to see through here. And if I hit delete, it's going to actually, that's not a great example, but it basically deleted that out and put the lines back in. So it's even, it's trying its best to look at the surrounding pixels and the pattern and then fill in that space so that whatever you're getting rid of, it's like it never was. Also, unlike Photoshop, which has a content-aware fill and some similar tools, Photoshop is really geared for photos and photography, and we've kind of optimized this algorithm more for screen content. So for what it's worth, people have tried to use it on a picture of a bird, and get the telephone pole out from between the clouds. It kind of does, but really, what we've really focused on is trying to make it great for screen content.
Okay.
So here's my, my first step, and what I would do is go through and do the same kind of treatment on these. And again, cooking show style. Here's my already prefabbed ones that I'm pulling out of the oven, ready to go. And we'll move this guy into this spot so that I can hopefully keep organized here. I have so many captures in my tray. So step one, sorry, this is step one. Step two, and then maybe I've already got it out of place. I think I have step three, step two somewhere else, and then this is step three. Anyway, that's kind of just to give you an idea of how you can go through and do a similar treatment for each of the screens. And there are some things like if this whole section up here is exactly the same, I can apply the auto simplify, but I could also use like the move tool again to say like grab all of these elements, multi-select all of those, and then I could copy and paste them onto another image too. So if there's something that's absolutely the same across, if you get it right in one, you can just kind of borrow that and use it for the others. Okay, so I'm going to jump back really quickly to the slides because what I wanted to do is show, let's run this example that we just did here of a normal screenshot versus this simplified and annotated screenshot. Let's run it through the eye tracking, which I did previously. And you can see that definitely we got rid of those big hot spots down at the bottom, which were distracting. And we've got still, we've gotten rid of this other big blue hot spot up here. And then there are some, there's still some distraction in the middle, I would say. So there's maybe more we could do to tone that down or something. But basically what we've got is, good focus on zoom. Okay, I know I'm looking at zoom and I'm looking at settings. That's kind of the most important thing. So, I think we've made some progress toward trying to get people focused in the right place. So another aspect of using simplified user interface and SUI is with localization and cutting localization costs. And so you could go all the way, and get rid of all the text from the entire screenshot, but probably it's going to have less instructional value. It's going to be harder for people to follow in most cases. So there's this kind of fine line between leaving some text. But what if you could actually turn the text into text strings and then localize it into multiple languages? So if I wanted to have the same screenshot with Portuguese text over here, Snagit has some tools for that too. So I'm going to also, cooking show style this, but this is the one that I've got here that we worked on earlier. I'm going to move my annotation out of the way and use select. And we're just going to focus on this one string. Actually, let me zoom in a little bit because it's probably even smaller on your side of things. Okay. So we'll get in here and select settings. And then another little kind of hidden gem of Snagit, if I right click anywhere in a selection, and if I've got text in that selection, I can do edit text. So grab text would actually OCR the text and put it on my clipboard so that I can paste it. Also pretty useful, but not sort of right in line with what we're doing today. So I'm going to do edit text, which does all of that in terms of OCRing the text, but then it actually lifts the text off, deletes the text from the screenshot, and then puts the text back on as a text object. So now it tries its best to guess what font family it is. So it sort of figured out like, here's a general view of what this is. I happen to know, and you probably know too, whatever the fonts are in your interface. So it's actually, I should find this out. Is it Lato or Lato? Maybe someone could tell me. Lato 10 is the font size of this interface in Zoom. That's what they use, and they also have it bolded. And so now we'll go in here, and I'm going to leave this a little bit long because Portuguese is a little bit longer text string typically. I saw a really great cartoon today of people playing Scrabble in German, and it was like this huge table that was like 10 people long, and because all the words are so long in German. Anyway, so yeah, now this is a text box. So this is editable text, and for the English one, I can just move this back, and really none the wiser. I mean, if you took a magnifying glass to this, you could probably see that it was different than the original screenshot, but it doesn't really look different. And the reason for this is because now Snagit can actually extract out that text into a common translation file, which is called an xlif file. So if I go, I'm just going to go over to the library where I've got a set of these already because I've got 3 of them. So let's go to this. I've tagged them with ready for translation. So if I go in here and just select these 3, all of which have had, the visible strings of text converted into editable text. So I select these and right click. Actually, there's a big obvious button down here in the lower right. So why don't I do that, because I'll make our UI designers feel better about putting it there. Translate, cool. So we'll give this one a name, Zoom settings, oops, STC demo. Okay, extract that out. I got a little thing here that it's ready. It made this text file, this xlif file. So what this is, this is the kind of file, if any of you do localization, this is what you send off to your localization vendor, and they go in and they say, oh, the word settings, in Portuguese, that's whatever it is. And then they change this from needs translation to, I think it's like translated or something. Also, I've done that so that you don't have to watch me make the translation file. And so once you get that file back, and this file corresponds to all 3 of these images, it could be more than 3, it could be 10 or 50. But once I get that back, I can go to File and Translate and Import Translation. And we should see here, this is my Zoom settings how-to in Portuguese that I already translated painstakingly by cheating and putting Zoom into Portuguese and then copying and pasting all the strings. So anyway, your translator would do that work for you, right? And they send this back and you're like, okay, I want to open that up. And it says, what language? Portuguese. Cool. And this little stoplight here would show me anything that if there were errors in each of these. I can just click through and kind of review each one and say, okay, well, this is pretty good, but configurações is a little bit longer, so I got to make my box longer here. And then this one fits pretty well. I might stretch that out just a little bit. And then this last one looks perfect. So these are, translated. All the strings that were English are now in Portuguese. So fairly, a fairly efficient system. And when you combine, you wouldn't want to do this for all of the text on the screen. Like, let's be honest, that would be harder than just going to the Portuguese interface and redoing all the screenshots. But if you've gotten rid of a lot of the text through SUI, and then you only have a little bit of text left, it might be really practical to actually do this kind of method and be able to have these screenshots now with the text in another language, or 6 languages, or 10. It doesn't take a lot more effort to scale that to a lot more languages. Any comments or thoughts on who is doing localization and at what scale? I'm always curious about that.
So at Emerson, we do a lot of localization, but what we've been doing with the images is just using callouts, A, B, and so on, and then the translations are underneath, and the localization provider doesn't touch the images themselves. That's been working for us.
Yeah, and if it sounds like your customers are okay seeing, I assume English, probably the English in the screenshots.
Yeah, this is mainly for hardware, so we don't have a lot of screenshots, I guess. We haven't really translated our screenshots at all. That's something to think about.
Yeah.
But yeah, we have
Thanks, Carolyn,
22 languages.
Yeah.
For
22, okay, that's a lot. I think when I talked with someone at Microsoft, they were like, I want to say they said 40 was their number. It's kind of mind-boggling to me.
Yeah.
But by the same token, I can see how this would be a lot simpler to do if you have those translation files already ready to go, just swap out that text as opposed to setting up and retaking 40 different screenshots of the exact same screen. Like we don't do localization currently. We keep talking about it, but we don't. But again, with the number of applications I've supported, I know the monotony of having that's what I used to have to do, was set up 15 different screenshots and then take them 15 different times, and it's a pain. So something like that would be much simpler.
Yeah, just getting it into the state, into the right state sometimes, like, that's the hardest thing. Well, if anyone does, work this into your localization kind of workflow, I would love to hear about it. It's a feature of Snagit that gets appealing to just like teams that actually are really hard into localization. But make it better.
Presentation. So I don't know if you added it or my memory's bad, but yeah, it's good to know for the future in the event that we ever do get around to localization.
Cool. Okay, so the I think did I have another slide here to go back to? I guess this is just sort of showing the side by side. You can kind of see how everything is the same except for that. And then I wanted to show this part too, which I think that's a great segue, Jen, because it's like there's so much in Snagit that folks, it's helpful just to have those refreshers sometimes. And maybe at the time that someone was talking about this, it was like, well, that's not relevant to me right now. But you come back later and maybe it is. So, or maybe you're talking to someone else and they're like, I have this problem, I need to solve it. So we would love to introduce you to some more things you can do in Snagit. So on the left here is an animated GIF. It could be video, it could be MP4, it could have a voiceover, or it could have no voiceover and just be like this sort of animated style. This was made 100% in Snagit, in the animation on the left. And on the right is sort of a one-pager layout of taking these same 3 steps and saying, here's your quick guide to, open the web settings and then disable your screen sharing. Here's how, and a little bit of text paired with the images. So I'm going to show you how to do both of these things pretty quickly so that we don't run right up to the end of time. And we'll go back into Snagit and do that here. Okay. So first the video, I think is how I wanted to do that. Actually, no, we're going to do the template first, I guess. So let me grab the right ones here. This, and this. Step 1, step 2, step 3. So I'm just going to select these 3. To do that, if you're not familiar, I can click between them, but if I click one and then I hold down the shift key and click the last one in the line, it'll select all of them together. And then right click to get the context menu. And in Snagit 2020, we added these new sort of creation modes. And so create video from images, which I'll show you in a minute, and then combine in template. You can also get to them from this big create button up at the top left up here. But I'll do this from the context menu, so combine in template. And what you get here is this kind of picker to choose a template. And we have a whole bunch that we ship in the product for free. And then there are a few more free on our website and more that are part of a paid subscription. So if you click this download more button, which I feel like is probably not obvious enough because not enough people click it, then you get this site that kind of shows you what's available. So there's 3 categories: stamps, which are kind of like graphics and stickers, templates, and we have multiple categories of templates and a few different styles. And we just added a new one, or actually I think we're going to make it live tomorrow, 3 new styles. We worked with a really great artist to create some new stuff. And then photos, so you can use those in your content as well. So all of that stuff is underneath that download more button. So anyway, we'll choose this one that I've already downloaded and say next. So I can come in here and say, how to prevent Zoom bombing. And I'm not going to make you watch me type, but step 1, tab, step 2, tab, step 3. So it's really kind of nice that you can just tab through these and type quickly, especially if you really know what the steps are. If you need to make them a little bigger for visual reference, like what was that one again? Good. Or if they got out of order, you can drag these around in here. Also kind of useful. Okay, so then everything looks good. So I'm going to hit combine. And I get this output right on the in Snagit. So everything in here is editable. I can, add the subtitle I want. The more you know. And add these headings and sort of edit anything here. I can change the color of elements. I can change the font size and type. There's some nice affordances here. So if you double click on one of these and say, you know what, actually the part I really want to show here is just this settings. So let's just zoom in on that. And if I double click here, because what I want to show is, again, mostly over here in the top left, so I can make it larger. And then this one, I really want to focus attention over here on the right on this screen sharing. So this kind of like goes into a crop mode, crop and pan mode when you double click. And this can be, you can output this a number of different ways. So if you hit the share button, you can send it directly into something like PowerPoint if that was like the best delivery mechanism at your company, or maybe you like to have everything in Google Drive or something like that. Send it straight to Slack. I don't think I have it configured, but we do have a SharePoint output. If you're, I'm sorry, using SharePoint, I'm sorry, but some people do. Save it as a file. Also, you can get to PDF too. So if you kind of go through as if you're going to print it, you can make it a PDF. It's not a PDF with text plus images. It's just like a flattened like image. That's something that we're looking at for future, is making this more of a rich output. Anyway, I know this isn't going to replace anybody's documentation like their official docs, and that's not the goal. The goal is really, how do you make these quick one-pagers that look nice, get the information across? We worked with someone who's, instructional design background to give us these layouts so that you could kind of, without having to think a lot about it, adopt some, some layout and TechCom best practices in these quick one-pagers.
Can you create your own templates?
So
like,
there's
start with an existing template and customize it so it matches your, like, that you can reuse?
Yeah, so the way that you would do that today, so let's say, this color is off brand for me, but yellow, this yellow definitely is my brand. You can go in here and customize elements like that, change the layout. And so it's most useful if you're going to be like, I want to make 3 more with the same layout, because then you can go File, Save As, and save it as a project. So if you save it as a snag file, .snag, that is completely editable. And then what I would say is like a kind of a best practice is just tag this. Have like a template tag. And then you can find it pretty easily. So I'll throw the template tag on here. Oh no. Oh, that's not great.
That is the danger of live demos.
There it is. And actually, that happened earlier when I was like doing a run through and I applied a tag. So if I had more time, I'd fill out that form, because then now it's almost like I can replicate it. That's like the best, right? Is when you can actually replicate it.
I mean, if it makes you feel any better, I once was on a project that got completely canceled because of a really horrible live demo.
That doesn't make me feel any better.
Like 20 people lost their jobs. It was a really, really horrible live demo to people that mattered. And
Okay.
it was a really buggy. Yeah, it was a disaster. Anyways, sorry, didn't mean to.
Wow. Yeah, that is rough. Well, one good thing is that we actually invested recently in better crash reporting, so that the stuff that if it does crash, if you write stuff in there and send it, our developers are they look at the top bug reports every day and get on this stuff. So yes, in a perfect world, all the software would be bug free. Anyway, so yes, I would say tag, do those modifications, save it as a snag file, tag it, hopefully it won't crash for you, and then you can find it again using that tag. We haven't built like a template creator workflow. So far, the tools for building templates are internal tools. I think eventually we'll get there, but probably first what we would do is give ways to sort of apply like a theme or a style, and like change that up, kind of like more of a global setting, rather than sort of here's a blank canvas, build a template from scratch. I think we would get a lot less uptake on that. We're open to hearing what people want.
Awful lot of work to me. Like to me, the way that I would use it would be to go steal your already well-designed templates and then make it match my existing styles.
Mm.
So, but which, like basically is exactly what you're talking about. Change the colors, maybe change the fonts, that kind of thing.
Right. Yeah, almost like make a theme, like your corporate theme, and then just be able to apply that. Yeah, that is, I would love that. And I think, when I look down the road, I think, man, it would be great then if you could say, well, a lot of companies have hundreds or thousands of Snagit users across them. How cool would it be if they could build that once and share it across all of their users, or whole groups of departments of users at their organization, to be able to then keep that consistency, kind of apply their corporate branding that way. We'll see. Well, I like these suggestions though. Keep them coming. So the last thing I want to show, so we just kind of looked at the one pager, and there are a lot of different layouts that you could use to sort of create those. But this last output I want to show you and is combining these.
Did Dana look up for everybody else or just me?
No, me too.
Nothing locked up for me as well.
Me too.
Okay.
I
So
totally thought it was my internet.
That's exactly what I thought. I was like, shit, did my internet just crash?
Because there's thunder outside too. I guess he lost.
Well, hopefully.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, well, I think we might have lost him. Hopefully he'll right himself here in a minute. Yeah, he's frozen. Hopefully it'll be temporary.
Well, it's paused. Will these slides be available later?
Yeah, we recorded
we
the
can ask-
presentation.
But,
Okay.
Yeah. Laura,
I wanted to go back and review that research that he mentioned, but I did not write down the link. So great, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
Yeah.
actually, I did write down the link, so I can include that in the chat.
Oh, okay,
Oh,
great.
cool. Thanks.
Yeah. Just.
Yeah, Laura's recording the presentation, so
Daniel,
we'll at least get it that way. But I'm sure Daniel will be glad just to share our slides, and I think he might be back in. I see a DF.
yeah, sometimes you have to turn off, at least in Zoom, you have to turn off the webcam.
I guess we shall see.
I don't know if he's back yet though.
Well, I see his initials, but I don't know
Yeah,
if he's.
can't hear him. Says he's connected to audio. Oh, there he is again.
I see him in here twice.
Oh,
But one says off, so maybe the disconnected version of him.
Where?
I see video.
we see you in here twice, Daniel. I don't know.
He's in here twice.
Okay, I'm closing my Windows laptop because it just completely froze up, and I don't think we have time to like reboot.
Okay.
Oh no.
So what I can do, my apologies for that. Yeah, it was going great. I'm on my Mac now. I'm not biased, but I do have fewer of those problems on my Mac. Anyway, so yeah, I think what I'll do is send you guys a link to this create video from images, if that works, or I could try to demo it from my. Mac. Would you like that? Shall I try it? Just compound the risk here.
Oh sure, let's go for it.
For you, maybe if you turn your video off, it might help. Sometimes that takes up too much bandwidth, I think.
All right.
See how it goes.
Okay, I'm gonna.
Are you still the presenter? Do you have that? Yeah.
I think I'm not on this one because I don't see the.
You are on the other one. Okay, hold on. Let me make
you
a presenter. All right.
Okay. Does insist that I go in here and give some new permissions, because that is the one thing that Macs love to do, is ask for permissions.
Oh.
Repeatedly.
I don't think I've used a Mac since like 2000.
I tried using one way back when, and you couldn't right click. You had to do something on the keyboard. That just turned me off.
You're
like, I'm out.
The only reason I used a Mac then was because I was in IT support, and we supported Windows and Mac, and so we had like a lone Mac at the support center that we would use to answer people's questions. And I'm like, you're really better off figuring this out yourself, because I don't know the first thing about Macs. Because you had to pretend like you knew what you were doing. Yeah, just let me put you on hold for a minute while I figure this out.
Okay, so it's telling me that to share the screen via GoToMeeting, because it's a new permission, I can't leave and come back. So
oh, really?
Okay. Be right back.
All right. I think I have to make you presenter again now.
Again, yeah.
Okay.
Thank you all for your patience. You're a great bunch. Thank you.
Okay, you're presenter.
Excellent. And I want screen 3.
Okay, yeah, we see it now.
Okay,
Yep, I can see it.
great. I have no idea what I have here. I don't think it's anything that's going to get me fired for proprietary, secrets. But I'll just use some kind of fake stuff here, and we'll make a go of it. So this was a survey that I was working on, and we'll just assume that these are the 3 steps of the survey. I want to make you a video and walk you through. So it's about the same on Windows and Mac, so it really won't be different. So select these 3 and then say create video from images. And it puts me into this mode. It's kind of like a PowerPoint-ish, very light. It's basically just giving me like, here's your slides. And I can rearrange these at the bottom. So actually this is the first thing that we would see, and then this is the last. And I've got these in order. I can change the background of my kind of area that I'm recording here. You can see my mic is bouncing. I'll leave my cursor off because it allows for some cool magic that you'll see in a second. And then these are my next and previous arrows. I can use those too to just go through the information or click randomly down here. So we'll see how this goes because I'm also running GoToMeeting at the same time. But okay, folks, so this is what we're doing with the survey. The person, if they actually say they're going to complete the survey, then we show this. You'll notice that we need to clean up this link. And then once they do that, it says thanks. And when they hit the close button, it's going to just close out the window. But if they click through, then this is what they see. Notice that I put the information about the gift cards here that we talked about. Okay, that's my video. So we've tried to really make creating video as easy as possible. And in this case, I'm doing voice narration because I didn't, in the other one I was showing you, I kind of had like the text laid out on each slide. And so you could do that one silently as just an animation. But in this case, today, we've got my, if they actually say wonderful dulcet tones going on here. But the cool thing is that all those animations just show up. We clean up this link live as the person plays through. So you can, there's just a lot of flexibility here. You can do this as a, slide-based thing. I'm going to talk, I'm going to draw and record that. I'm going to put all the information on the slides and just do an animation and click through it, and then have that ready to share. Now, this one makes sense to share as an MP4 because I have the audio, so I could do that through the share button. One nice thing that folks often don't discover is that you can actually drag out of this tray, and it'll just give you the MP4. I don't know where it put it. It probably put it on a different monitor, but that's another way to share, have that MP4 ready to go. And then finally, if you want to make a GIF, you can just take, what I would recommend is try to make the GIF as short and concise as possible. So I'm just going to say, select out this little section here, use my imagination about what the real steps are, but I'll grab this selection and then hit the GIF button and say, oh, I just want to use that selection, not the whole video. These are essentially just presets that say, this one is if it's like camera video, this is for anything screen, and then you can go custom and change the frames per second or whatever you want to do if you want that. But I would just leave it as screen video, which is the default for most applications. And now I've got a 16-second GIF that's looping and just shows these couple of steps. So that's a super useful output. And before with Snagit, you could do this only if you recorded like, something on the screen start to finish, but now you can have these like slide-based sort of animations. Are folks using animated GIF or video much, even internally, if not in your customer facing content?
Not right now, but we'd love to.
Yeah, same here. I'm not doing it right now, but it's definitely something that I want to do and know nothing about. So, yeah, that's something that I would definitely like to get into for us is some like short tutorial videos.
Nice.
I think our main issue is making sure that it's compatible with our internal intranet site, that you can actually view it.
What is the site that you use?
What's that?
What is the internal site that you use?
Oh, well, ours is based out of Salesforce.
Okay.
Yeah. But I mean, we can upload GIFs, but I mean, I don't know if the animated ones work or not. I think it's just something I have to test out.
Right. Yeah.
I know with Flare you can embed videos directly into the help, which was something I was gonna do, but I haven't actually played with that feature. But
Nice.
it's like I don't really want to put them on YouTube or something like that because our network blocks YouTube, so that's kind of pointless to most people.
Right. Can't get to them.
Yeah, exactly. Which there's an argument for why YouTube shouldn't be blocked at work, but there you go, all the same.
Yeah, and the nice thing is, if you want to play around with that, you have the ability to make those GIFs or MP4s really easily here. Even just make a test one, right, and then throw it in and kind of see how it does. We are doing another thing that's coming in Snagit 2021 in October next month already. Is on Windows we reworked how GIFs are built, because the way we did it before, they were a little bit larger file size, but it'll be much more similar to what you get on Mac, which is a pretty nice file size usually. I can check this one here in 16 seconds. It's 265K, so pretty compact. A big reason for that is because we don't repeat. If the same frame is on the screen for multiple seconds, it just gets saved once in this format, and that's the format that we're going to use on Windows now.
Yeah, I have played with Camtasia some, which seems really complex. I mean, like I'm not an expert at Camtasia by any stretch, which was how I was kind of thinking of doing videos, and this seems like a lot simpler way to approach it than using Camtasia, because I open Camtasia and there's just a lot going on and I don't know what to do with any of it.
Right. Yeah, we've striven to, if that's a word, to really keep it kind of a streamlined, like start to finish, do it in one take. So it's really kind of, ideal for shorter videos where you can do it in one take. And then if you don't like it, just redo it, rather than getting kind of down the rabbit hole of doing a ton of editing. There is a little bit of editing. You kind of saw when I went through here and selected, you can cut. So you can trim out a little section that you don't want, but that's the amount of the editing in Snagit for video.
Yeah, that looks pretty simple to use.
So that's sort of the conclusion of what I had to share. Kind of the summary is that visuals do matter. We made the case for why they matter, why they help people, and then it's really about how do you make them work really effectively and be super concise and focused on the user and what their needs are, right? By just getting rid of distracting things, also helping yourself out by having less churn and being able to deal with localization. This is my email address, and so feel free to email me or pass this on to someone else that that has questions about Snagit or needs anything. Snagit related or SUI related, I'm happy to help out. There is this Slack community that we were talking about a couple times. I think it's a resource that certainly would love if more people use, and I do whatever I can to try to provoke conversation in there and get people sharing examples, but yeah, that is available. So let me know and I'd be happy to send you an invite. Any questions or things I can help with, or just discussion points people want to discuss?
Thanks very much, Daniel. If anyone has any questions for Daniel or for our STC South Central Texas chapter, go ahead. Thank you all for attending.
Daniel, thank you so much for agreeing to do this. It was a really excellent presentation. I learned new stuff again, even though I've watched you, I was in your summit session, I still learned new stuff. So that's always a bonus. So thank you so much for presenting for us.
Thank you so much, Daniel. Even though I've used Snagit for years, I've learned something new too.
Great. That's really great. Thanks for giving me the opportunity, y'all. You've been a great audience. Thanks for your patience with the technical hiccups there near the end. I feel like we were pretty blessed to get as far through as we did with all the things in between us in terms of technology. But yeah,
Right.
thanks for going along on the ride.
Well, it was no problem. We figured you'd be back.
Yeah.